I know there are comedians who have made references in jokes to Russell's alleged crimes and have either been asked or told to not do those jokes anymore.
Welcome to WatchMojoUK, and today we're looking at the biggest scandals to hit British stand-up comedians over the years.
Have you seen my new show? It's called The News. Good.
I'm featured a lot on it lately.
Johnny Marbles. Marbles, real name Jonathan May Bowles, wasn't a well-known comedian at the time and still isn't. However, he was arrested and sentenced for assaulting none other than media baron Rupert Murdoch back in 2011. Murdoch was giving a speech in Parliament at the time, and Marbles was able to get him with a cream pie. This all sounds a bit silly, but Marbles claimed he was an activist and that he pied Murdoch because of his role in the News of the World phone hacking scandal, a very serious matter.
Why did you do it, sir?
And the criminal charges brought against Marbles were no laughing matter either.
I'm at the risk of repeating myself, and again I'm sure Mr. Murdoch will appreciate the irony here. I cannot comment on ongoing...
Julian Clary and Norman Lamont.
Good to see you. How's it hanging?
Oh, very well, thank you. Very nice of you to recreate hamster teeth for me here.
These days, saying something like this about a prominent politician probably wouldn't be noteworthy. After all, getting into politics all but guarantees you'll be mocked far and wide. But that wasn't how the establishment took this joke Julian Clary made about Norman Lamont in 1993 at the British Comedy Awards.
As a matter of fact, I've just been fisting Norman Lamont.
Lamont, former Chancellor of the Exchequer, and his wife were in the audience at the time.
So how did you jump to the front of the queue then?
Just clawed my way through.
Yeah.
Clary's X-rated barb made him the target of a campaign by the tabloids to get him banned from TV, and the work clearly did dry up for a while as a result. Years on though, and Clary remains a popular comedian who says he doesn't regret what he said. Angus Deaton. There were plenty of people in the public eye who thought this particular controversy was farcical even back then.
This has been one story of the week, isn't it? But the one I'm really interested in, Angus, is...
Ridiculous or not, however, it still lost Deaton his job presenting Have I Got News For You. After it came out, he'd been taking Class A's and hiring sex workers.
But you must have paid her for the article. I mean, I don't want to dwell on this, but...
It's not like Deaton was known as a family entertainer, but the tabloids put so much attention on him that the BBC apparently felt it had no choice but to sack him.
I was as guilty of Ian really of sort of bringing on the front cover of the News of the World. I mean, it's really, to go to all that kind of effort is just unbelievable.
His career did eventually recover, but he still has to regularly talk about the scandal in interviews. James Corden. He seems to get more unpopular each year, and there are genuine reasons not to like James Corden. For a start, there are stories that he doesn't respect the crew on many of the shows he's worked on, and that he's been rude to waiters.
When you see Elon Musk talk about Twitter, he does this thing where he goes, well, it's the town square.
But what puts Corden at odds with other comedians is his alleged habit of joke stealing.
If someone puts up a poster in a town square that says, guitar lessons available, like, you don't get people in the town go, I don't want to play the guitar!
Yes, many other high-profile stand-ups, including Ricky Gervais, have accused Corden of stealing jokes over the years. Gervais called out Corden publicly, though he also said he believed it must have been one of Corden's many writers who took the joke, and Corden just didn't realise.
That's like going into a town square, seeing a big notice board, and there's a notice, guitar lessons, and you go, but I don't want guitar lessons!
Danny Baker's tweet. His career still hasn't recovered after this poorly conceived tweet back in 2019. Baker tweeted out a picture of a couple with a chimpanzee captioned "Royal Baby Leaves Hospital" following the birth of Prince Harry and Meghan Markle's son.
The genesis and execution of that disastrous tweet is so trivial and absurd compared to its perception and consequences.
This was perceived by some as racist, and the BBC very quickly sacked Baker from his job at 5 Live.
And they say, Well, before the news here on BBC One, it's time for monkeys dressed as famous people plus fairground music.
However, Baker later explained that he'd long had a comedy bit about monkeys dressed as famous people, and that no racial element was ever intended.
You know, you got to be an ignoramus or racist, be unaware of that trope and that slur.
A lot of other famous faces criticised the Beeb for taking such severe action without much investigation, nor accepting Baker's apology. Sean Walsh and Katya Jones.
I'm joined now by Sean and Katya. Now, on It Takes Two, we like to talk about the dancing, but that's been somewhat overshadowed by events this week.
Why exactly this scandal remained the #1 news item in the country for 2 weeks is anyone's guess, but it did, taking over the nation. Sean Walsh was a contestant on Strictly that year and had been paired up with professional dancer Katya Jones. Walsh had a girlfriend and Jones was married, but they were snapped kissing and ended up on the front page of the tabloids for days on end.
Is there anything else that either of you'd like to say?
I think that, obviously I'm sorry for the hurt that I've caused.
They stayed in Strictly, but were, unsurprisingly, voted off the following week.
Sean, your ex-girlfriend Rebecca has put out a statement. Is there anything you'd like to say about that?
I think, first of all, I would rather not be having to address this publicly.
They had to talk about it on TV and apologise. Their respective relationships broke down, and the scandal is still the biggest thing Walsh is known for. Andrew Lawrence. You know something's amiss when you start arguing with Frankie Boyle online about what comedians should and shouldn't do jokes about.
Yeah, it's my sixth sense of humour. I found that quite funny, so I was straight on Twitter.
In this case, in 2015, Lawrence was getting increasingly frustrated at his fellow stand-ups, specifically the ones on Mock the Week, making what he believed were, quote, cheap gags about UKIP. But he was embroiled in a much bigger scandal in 2021 when he made highly offensive comments about England's loss to Italy on penalties during the Euros final.
Let's contextualise it. You know, this was soon after the George Floyd affair. You know, everything had kicked off. Black Lives Matter. So there was a particular sensitivity about the issue of race.
We won't repeat what he said, but he was yet another voice attacking England's black footballers in the wake of the match, and he ended up deleting his Twitter account.
Maybe 30, 40 tour dates. All in one go, which to my mind it seemed like, well, this is orchestrated, this is an organisation who have gone to work contacting these venues.
Jimmy Carr's taxes. In 2012, Jimmy Carr was revealed as one of many people using a tax avoidance loophole.
This isn't tax evasion, this is tax avoidance. So it's following the letter of the law, not the spirit of the law, and leaving it up to us to decide how much we pay.
He'd kept over £3 million from the eyes of HMRC in a complex scheme involving offshore accounts registered in Jersey to dodge income tax.
Think of all those people who work hard, who pay their taxes, and out of that post-tax income save up to go and see Jimmy Carr. He's taking that money and stuffing it into something where he doesn't have to pay taxes.
Carr, of course, apologised quickly and has since talked about what the fallout from the scandal was like. His career survived, and to his credit, he kept up his television appearances and handled endless jokes at his expense from his fellow comedians on 8 out of 10 Cats. He said he's very grateful the scandal didn't end his career in its tracks, though arguably he still hasn't lived it down.
I'm not sure if you're aware, but in 2012 I had a 50% pay cut.
Michael Barrymore. Though he was better known as a TV presenter, Barrymore did perform stand-up as well, and his career went from strength to strength until one horrific event in 2001.
All 3 were released without charge. But the damage to Michael's career seemed irreversible.
Barrymore and some friends went back to his house for a party one night, but things took a very dark turn when one of the guests, a man named Stuart Lubbock, was found unconscious in Barrymore's pool and soon died.
Michael Parker, me, has an alibi from 3 people in the period immediately prior to the discovery of Stuart in the pool. I therefore conclude that there is insufficient evidence against all 3 suspects.
Lubbock's death was highly suspicious, with foul play suspected, and many of the guests, including Barrymore himself, were arrested and questioned multiple times.
The truth about this, Michael, isn't it, is that we may never know the truth.
Yes.
To this day, however, the crime remains, sadly, unsolved. Russell Brand.
I've never ever spoken publicly about this before. Russell seems untouchable.
Following a very long investigation by Channel 4's Dispatches and The Times and The Sunday Times, allegations against comedian Russell Brand were made public. They came from 4 separate women, detailing serious alleged crimes, and a media storm began.
Brand was a self-proclaimed sex addict, and his promiscuity was celebrated in the tabloid press.
Channel 4 and the BBC, which employed Brand for years, launched investigations, while the Met also announced it was looking into fresh allegations of criminal wrongdoing.
I've got a assistant called. Part of her job description is that anyone I demand she greet, meet, massages, she has to do it. She's very attractive, Jimmy.
Brand himself claimed he was a victim of a coordinated attack from media outlets, and it looks like we'll be waiting a while to know the veracity of their allegations and whether criminal charges will be brought.
Would you like her to wear anything in particular, Sir Jimmy?
I'd actually prefer her to wear nothing.
Let us know in the comments which scandal you couldn't believe.
Just get the money, pay the tax, and then fine. Obviously, I should have done that earlier, but